Have you, so you're Scott Leroy, that should, did Rivers give you all of that, or did you get the information to do all your Scott Leroy stuff?
I got emails for it.
Okay, yeah, so that will let you, that will go in and create your KW email, also like your DocuSign login, all of
Okay, yeah.
that kind of stuff. Yeah, yeah, so make sure you, check on those and get those done, because then it'll be like, oh my God, I forgot to do this, and now I gotta write an offer, or my DocuSign's not working.
So.
Yes, yes. We do not want that to happen. All right, and then wait one. Wait for the other victims. We're good today. Usually I'm like 5 minutes late trying to get everything up here. Enough practice, I've gotten it down pat, like, all right, click here, click here, click here. All right, it's 1 o'clock. We're gonna get started and we'll be respectful of your time. This is a 1-hour class and I will do all I can to get you out by 1. If you have any questions, then I do have a few minutes afterwards. I feel bad that my back is to you, but if it doesn't bother you, then okay, I understand, that's fine. I just.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, offer to purchase and contract, a couple of things. We're not gonna go through it line by line. I'm gonna hit some of the high spots. I did give you a copy in case you want to make any notes, and so then you kind of got a Cliff Notes version of if it's 10 o'clock at night and I can't get Karen to help write this offer, what do I need to put here, kind of thing. So seller, obviously the seller is as it is, so you're writing, we're going through this as if you are the buyer. Okay, so hey, come on in. Thank you. No worries.
Andrew's coming too.
Yep, just if you want to add notes. Andrew, do you need to learn about the North Carolina?
I
offer
do.
purchase?
I did just take foot license.
So we're going through this as if you are the buyer agent writing the offer to purchase. So the seller's name is as it reads on the deed and on the tax card. Don't always trust MLS. MLS should be congruent with that, yet it's not always. So one of the things that in command on your checklist for under contract, if you're on the buy side, is a copy of the deed, a copy of the tax card. And the reason being is you pull those things, number one, to make sure, does the person own the house? Can they actually convey it? And also just to make sure that we are addressing it correctly. So seller might be a trust. It could be an entity. It could be individual people as well. And it might be a power of attorney. So just some things to think about from the seller perspective. Anytime the seller is an entity or a trust, it must still be signed by a human. So let's say that the seller is SM Ward Construction Incorporated. The seller must sign, the authorized signer for that company must be the person that signs. It's not signed SM Ward Construction Incorporated. It's signed Scott Ward or Karen Ward because they are the authorized signers for that entity. Same thing with a trust. It must be, the name of the seller is the name of the seller. Yet it must always be signed by an entity, or a trust must be signed by a human being, not the name of the entity or trust.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
No worries. I mean, if you weren't so tall, you wouldn't have
You wouldn't
impacted my
If I
entire
wasn't so tall, I wouldn't be walking.
Buyer, so, buyer is the name or names of your buyer. One thing you might want to check on this is, can both buyers be on the offer to purchase? The reason that I say that is because in North Carolina, it takes one to buy, but it takes two to sell. So I can buy something without Scott's name being on the offer to purchase. And
And
I was gonna say, Joe, you might wanna hang out.
Look at everybody.
Yeah, round up your
Don't get
friends,
the
where's
wind.
that right out? Public service announcement. You check with the lender on this, because sometimes both people may not qualify to be on the offer to purchase. So the lender might say, okay, we can, it's only gonna be in one name, because if we add the other person, their credit is so horrible that it makes them not be able to qualify for the loan. So just a note on that to check on that from your buyer's standpoint. Check boxes will or will not include a manufactured home, and will or will not include an off-site or separate septic lot, boat slip, garage, parking space, or storage unit. Really, in our environment, the only thing that we run into would be an off-site septic, separate lot for a septic. Unfortunately, we don't have boat slips where we are, and garage, parking space, storage unit. Most of the time, you're gonna see those in like downtown city, you know, very, very urban in environment. So like in, you know, it could be in downtown Raleigh or downtown Charlotte, that you own a condo in a high rise, and you might have a storage unit, you might have an assigned parking space, you know, those sorts of things. So really, in our area, the biggest thing that we run into is off-site separate lots for the septic. Street address, pretty self-explanatory. Legal description, put as much information in here. Let's not be lazy agents. Let's complete it because you've already pulled the deed, you've already pulled the tax card, so you have all of your information that you can put in here. So a couple of different things. For me, if I'm a listing agent and I get an offer and it has all of this filled out, I'm on happy from there. I'm like, this is going to be a good transaction. This agent knows what they're doing, and this is going to be a good transaction. So all of the information, some of it, lot, unit, and block, you are most likely not going to find those. That was the old way that the county tracks the properties, was map, lot, block. That was the number. Now they've gone to a PIN or a PID, which is, depending on which county you're in, it's that number on the tax card that could be anywhere from 6 digits up to 11 digits, again, depending on the county. Other descriptions. So when you pull your tax card, you will see many times it might say lot 2, PB 46/12, McIntosh at the Lake. that's your other description. So that technically is like the legal description that you would put in there. That's where the attorney's gonna start on the title search, is from that legal description. And then, like I said, you've pulled the deed, so you know, number one, the person owns it, they can convey it. And also, you know, the deed book and page. So the other reason too is this may be a scenario where if you see two people on that deed, the listing agent only has one person listed in MLS, would be a conversation. Hey, is there, you know, has there been a death, or are they divorced, or, you know, do both parties' names need to be on there? Because I see that it's on there on the deed. Purchase price, obvious. Due diligence, made out directly to the seller. And it's to be delivered on the effective date of the contract. So the last date that all parties have signed is when it's due. We do not do cash. Please do not handle cash.
People still have cash in their pockets.
I mean, technically, the buyer could hand deliver cash to the seller. We just don't want to be in the middle of it for a couple of reasons. Number one, in your compliance, you're required to upload a copy of the due diligence. It is a federal offense to copy cash.
I've seen people do that.
I,
Oh, wow.
How would you have a paper trail? I mean, obviously we don't want to do it, but.
I would get in blood,
a
written receipt.
written receipt.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And a picture of all the serial.
But you
numbers.
can't take a picture of me, like that really is
You
not,
can take a picture of it, you just can't photocopy it.
oh, gotcha.
Like you
Okay.
can't lay your
All
hundreds
of-
down on the copier.
Most modern day copiers won't even copy it. They
Oh, wow.
recognize it's money and it won't do it.
Oh, wow.
Kind of like sometimes our compensation checks,
Mhm.
like the, you know,
Yeah,
it won't,
seal.
yeah, the seal that's on there.
Side note, cash is not insured either.
Right.
So like if you have cash at home and your house burns down and the cash goes with it, the only way that's insured is if you have a picture of every bill you had with the serial number showing.
Yes.
Karen, can I ask about the wire transfer though? Because you just
Yes.
mentioned in our compliance file how we had to have a proof.
Yes.
Is that like, what's the easiest way to do that? Because I know wire transfers happen out there
Mhm, mhm.
and there's not really the paper trail with that unless you go through, right, get the person to go to their bank and send all that.
So typically, we would typically get it from the, from the
Buyer.
seller. So you've got one for the buyer. So whether it's a wire transfer, whether it is a Venmo, Cash App, all of those are the same. When you send, you either get an email or you get a screenshot that says this amount of money was sent. So screenshot of that is fine. And then, obviously receipt of the seller, screenshot of that is adequate as well. I'd like for them to sign, but I'm not gonna not approve a file if I know, okay, the money was sent and the money was received, if I can see that. Recommended is official bank check, or electronic transfer, which is becoming, more common. Wire transfer, so, I'm starting to see a few more of these where, they are wiring the money to the closing attorney, the due diligence, and then the
Mhm.
attorney is, so we're not out there in monies from buyer, seller, and now buyer and seller have their account numbers and, you know, those sorts of things. So typically they'll send it to the attorney. Yeah. Initial earnest money, goes to the escrow agent. We do not hold earnest money. And, again, that is within 5 days. Due diligence money is immediate, 5 days for earnest money. Again, recommend a, official bank check or a wire transfer, or electronic transfer to the, directly to the attorney. Additional earnest money is time is of the essence. So many times what we'll see is due diligence period ends on this date. And on that date, the next day would be additional earnest money would be deposited. Is how you would want to work your dates as far as that goes. Assumption, call an attorney. Seller financing, call an attorney. Even though it says that there is a seller financing addendum, there is so much more to seller financing than what's covered in that seller financing addendum. Call an attorney, because that seller financing addendum does not provide an amortization schedule for you. Or, you know, it's a general document. And when you get into seller financing, there could be a lot of different, well, I want it to balloon at this point in time, or, whatever. So all of those, call an attorney. Building deposit, that is covered in new construction addendum. And then balance is purchase price minus any of those, and to get that number. Any questions so far? Top page of number 2. Pretty important. Yeah, I feel like that, the real estate commission, real estate forums committee, in conjunction with the North Carolina Bar, should have put this one in blue. Anything that's in blue is like a pause. You might want to read this, might want to talk through it a little more with your client. However, I've seen this more and more. Should the buyer fail to deliver either the due diligence fee or initial earnest money by the due dates, or should the checks bounce, which again is why we recommend certified funds or some sort of electronic or wire, because we know that those funds are there. Buyer has 1 banking day to make that up. Here's the caveat: the seller has to ask for it. So there's a form for that. Demand for monies, that the seller has to say, okay, you haven't given it to me, or it bounced. You've got 1 business day. On that 1 business day, then it must be certified check, wire, or electronic transfer, which again is just why we recommend that from the beginning. So that form is sent within 1 business day. If the buyer does not deliver the funds, the seller has the unilateral right to terminate the contract.
But the seller has to demand it.
Seller has to demand it. Yes, that's the key, is they have to ask for it. We can't just go, 5 days, we don't have any due diligence money, or 10 days, and we don't have any earnest money, and there's been no demand, and the seller say, all right, I'm backing out. No, they have to ask for it. And this is kind of tricky, yet if the monies aren't delivered, or let's say part of the monies are delivered, part of the monies are not delivered, they delivered the earnest money, but they didn't deliver the due diligence money, there's still a demand. All of that money belongs to the seller if it's not delivered. So the earnest money would go to the seller, and then the due diligence money would go to the seller. Now, how are you going to get it? You're gonna have to go to court to get it, but it's stated very much in black and white that the seller is entitled to that. Depends, you know, client says, well, are we going, should I take them to court and get it? Well, it depends. If it's a $50,000 due diligence check, yeah. I probably am. Would pay an attorney 10 grand to go to court to get my other 40 grand. Not even to mention, but again, that's where we say, call an attorney. Earnest money deposit, this is where you would want to name the escrow agent. I see a lot of, buyer's choice of attorney or TBD. If you're writing an offer and there's earnest money involved, you need to know who's closing that and who's holding that money at that point in time. So that's having a conversation to say, okay, who do we want to choose as our escrow agent, our / closing attorney?
In the state of North Carolina, is escrow agent synonymous with closing attorney, or could I have an escrow agent hold the money and pick a different closing attorney?
Yes, the answer is yes, you can have two different.
So this is only the person holding the earnest money. I know typically they're the
Yeah.
same. We ran into that sometimes in South Carolina where they did want to pick, change their mind on the attorney, but they went ahead and held the earnest.
Yes, yes. So if there's earnest money, there needs to be an attorney's name here. So this box in blue is the reason that Keller Williams does not hold earnest money is because of disputes. So once that money goes into escrow and that escrow agent is holding it, they cannot disperse that money if it's disputed. So even though the contract may say the buyer is entitled to, or the seller is entitled to, if the other party disputes and says, no, I'm not, they don't get that money, then the escrow agent has to hold it until a court order at that point on how to disperse it. Effective date, we talked about that. The effective date is the date that the last one of the buyer and seller has signed or initialed any counter offer, and then communicated. Communicated can be a text, a phone call, a email that is communicated. Due diligence. As we know, due diligence is the buyer's opportunity to investigate the property and the transaction. That includes being able to get the loan, all of any and all inspections, survey, any additional services they may want to have. Due diligence fee is how much money? There doesn't have to be any. I mean, you can have a contract with zero money so long as both parties agree to it. So there doesn't have to be due diligence. There doesn't have to be earnest money. Yet a strong offer is going to include at least one, if not both of those. From a negotiation standpoint, we've kind of moved into mostly due diligence, very little earnest money, seeing a little bit of both. So strong, and sometimes there'll be a counter. So let's say I said, I'll give you $2,500 in due diligence money and $2,500 in earnest money. That can be a counter to come back and say, nope, just give me the whole 5,000 in due diligence. Same difference there. I mean, if the buyer's intent is to close, they're going to get all that money credited back to them anyway. And if for whatever reason they don't, they may have to go to court to get that other 2,500, which wouldn't be worth it at that point in time because of court costs and that sort of thing. Oh my God, this drives me crazy. I work on a Mac and it's the opposite.
Backwards.
It's backwards and I have to remember that it's backwards. Okay, your due diligence period. So, this could be, you have a choice and either one is fine. You can enter, the date that it ends. Like May 21st. Or you can put, X number of days after the effective date. Either one is time is of the essence. Either one is time is of the essence. So if it's May 21st, 5 PM on May 21st, due diligence ends. If it is 15 days after the effective date, 15 days at 5 PM is when the due diligence period expires. And this is calendar days. These are not business days. So think about that whenever you're scheduling, that you've got enough time for any and all inspections and loan approval.
Is the effective date day one?
Effective date is day one. Yep. So it's effective today. The next day is day one.
Alright, so effective date is day 0.
Yes,
If it's effective at 7 o'clock at night,
The
What
next
day
day
is
is
that?
day one.
next day is day one.
Like Friday night at 7 o'clock, Saturday is day one.
okay,
Yes.
I just,
Yeah.
the 5 o'clock thing's throwing me off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just when it
Yeah.
expires, but from an executed standpoint, if it's before 12 AM.
Okay.
Yes,
So she,
It's executed.
anyway, okay,
Yeah.
just making sure.
it's not a 24-hour.
Well, you know South Carolina law, so I don't want to confuse anybody. I'm
Yes.
just making sure I understand.
Yes,
Karen, can that date be like even equal to like closing date, if you would, like could you say 30 days after, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't, 2 weeks, I know is like the norm,
Sure.
but that could be anything, right? Like 21 days, it could be
Yeah,
28
right.
days.
yep,
Yeah, I agree.
It's on, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so long as both parties agree, it can be however many days. I mean, you know, and sometimes it might be, if it's an extended closing, you know, or a seller rent back or something like that. You know, there's a lot of different, things depending on what the situation is. Typically, we see 14 to 21 days, you know, something like that. And so then we have our, the settlement date. So same thing here. You can put a specific date, or you can put 30 days after executed contract. That still works. Again, knowing that it's calendar days.
Now, the due diligence, you said the first day is the next day.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So irregardless what time, if we went under contract at 8 AM today or 8 PM today, tomorrow is day one.
And this, you may have just said this, but typically you said 14 to 21 days. And is it really preferential one way or the other, or just
Yeah.
totally insignificant?
I mean, really, the, either one is fine. Yeah, it's just, the time frame is what the time frame is.
Okay.
I mean, you can either count out 14 days and put the date in there, or you can put 14 days after the effective date.
Okay.
Yeah.
You also want to take into consideration, like, if you're in a busy holiday period,
Right.
and people aren't working to do inspections, or it's
More days,
Yes,
the month of June and there's like inspectors are backed up,
yeah.
things to take into mind as you're helping your.
Yeah. or it's Thanksgiving falls in there somewhere when
My
there's,
first couple of,
Yeah.
I was told 10 to 14 days, and then my lender was like, oh,
yeah,
no, thank you.
Yeah.
So I thought 10, so
Okay.
Cause if a
Yes.
holiday falls in there and you know people aren't working, that's counted as one of your days.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's almost
Okay.
like a dead
Yes.
day.
Yes. South Carolina's like the wild, wild west.
The contract's so much clearer.
Oh my gosh.
So much easier. So much easier.
We make everything like
Yeah.
long sentences.
Well, at least we are moving in the right direction of cutting pages out instead of adding additional
But
pages.
the paragraph are like,
Yeah,
Our
Yes.
OTP was,
wow, one day.
um. Settlement date, so again, specific date or 30 days from, or whatever the number is, from effective date. Either one is fine. And then we'll talk about delay and settlement. Section M just defines what closing is. So settlement just means that we show up at the attorney's office. We've all agreed that we're gonna show up. Closing is the actual action of all of the processes of the buyer signing the deed of trust, if there is one, the seller signing the deed over to the buyer, the attorney recording, all of those things is actual closing. The big red one just says it's gotta be an attorney. We're not a title state, it has to be an attorney that does the actual closing. And then we address special assessments. Special assessments, a charge against the property by a governmental authority in addition to ad valorem taxes and recurring government service fees levied such as taxes by owner association in addition to any regular assessment dues, either of which may be a lien against the property. Buyer and seller's respective responsibilities for the payment of special assessments are addressed later. Then we're going to talk about fixtures and exclusions. So this says in bold, all existing fixtures are included in the sale as part of the purchase price, free of liens unless excluded in subparagraphs D or E. So all of these things right here are included. It is not necessary for you to then include them under personal property to remain. So essentially, if it's attached with a screw, it stays.
or buried.
Yes, or buried, yes. So trees, bushes, basketball goals,
Mailbox.
mailboxes, yes, those sorts of things, pools. And all of the pool spa equipment, floor coverings. Some of these things seem comical, yet,
Is that,
oh, it's happened, and that's why it's on there, yes. Garage door openers, very specifically, generators that are permanently wired, invisible fencing, smart devices must be, and we'll get to it, we'll get to smart resetting, any of the equipment for smart devices, remote controls, like, garage door openers, all of those, remain with the actual product.
Some sellers really think they can just take their smart thermostats with them. I've seen it happen. I show up to the walkthrough and the smart thermostat's gone.
Yeah.
So on the seller side, make sure you're advising properly, but on the buyer side, it's helpful to take pictures when you're doing showings
Yes, yes,
before you write that offer. Be like, no, it was there
yeah,
that time of showing.
or the ring,
Because they'll take them down and you often won't even catch it until it's
Don't let
like, wait a minute, I thought this had a nest. Oh, no.
yes,
I have a question about that.
yes,
I've been told that the property should sell in the condition of the showing, like the condition it was.
that is
in
correct.
At the showing, but I've also been advised in the past to schedule a second showing after the initial one, when they're like, oh, we really want to buy this house, like, we're interested, we want to put in an offer. I've been advised in the past to do a second showing with just the agent, so you can like open all the doors, turn on all the lights, turn on the fireplace, make sure everything's in working condition. So if you were to do that, is it supposed to convey in the condition of the first or second showing?
Condition of time of offer.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, that's very good practice, absolutely. Particularly if there's a time frame, like, you know, oh, we went and saw this house and then 2 weeks later, they want to make an offer. I would probably say, let's go back and take a look at it just one more time before we write that offer. Or the agent can do it, you know, just as a preview as well, if, you know, if the buyers are okay with that. It is a condition at time of offer. So that's,
Cause little Joey ran through the wall since you
That's
saw
good
it.
to
Right.
know. I know.
Yes.
Like,
yes,
that's what made me wonder
Yeah.
about it.
yes.
'cause
Well, I
something
mean,
could've changed.
we've had trees fall on houses 2 days before closing and, you know, that sort of thing. So, and then we get to, talking about unpairing and deleting data. So seller has to unpair any devices that they may have had paired, you know, so that they can't, drive by and hit that button that's in their car to open the garage door, and, you know, now your garage door is open. That sort of thing. So, then we're gonna talk, and so items that are leased or not owned. Sometimes you think, oh, well, I mean, it's a question to ask. Are there any leased items? Because there might be, or not yet owned. So, antennas, satellite dishes, typically they're just like, you call and cancel, they're like, that stuff is so dated, just chunk it. They don't want you to send it back or anything like that. Appliances. So they are conveying, so the range conveys, right? Well, what if they've got a payment plan with Rent-A-Center,
Mhm.
something like that? So that item is leased, it's not owned. I had a, I had a listing where the HVAC system was replaced. They were paying, like they got a bill every month, you know, because some of these companies will finance it for you, that sort of thing. So, just asking, are there any items that, are remaining that aren't owned? Alarm systems, security systems, things like that. We're gonna talk about fuel tanks. This is also solar panels. This is where you have to have a conversation about solar panels. So my advice on solar panels, number one, if you are looking at a property that has solar panels, back your car up and turn and go as fast as you can in the other direction. Would be my recommendation. No, I mean, we don't see a ton of them, but we are seeing them. The biggest thing here is you need a copy of the lease. Of whatever that, because they don't own them until after a period of time. And then it becomes is the seller paying it off at closing? And then the buyer owns them now free, not free, but already paid for, yes, owns them outright, thank you. Thank you for my words over here.
You're welcome.
Sometimes I forget them. Or is the buyer taking over that lease? Are they assuming that lease? So anything with solar panels, whether you're listing or whether your buyer is buying, that's very important, that needs to be addressed here. And then we're gonna list, any items that do not convey. Anything that's on this list right here that does not convey is what goes in that section down here. My recommendation here on the list side is if it's not gonna convey, get rid of it. Take it down. If it's grandma's chandelier and it's not conveying, take it down, replace it with a like kind for the appropriate for the style and price of the house. Don't go to Lowe's and buy that $15 little brass thing when you know. So same thing with decorative mirrors. If you're really attached to your mailbox, you know, whatever the case may be, you never know. So if it's not going to convey, then have them go ahead and remove it. Seller, anything that's removed, again, like I said, seller must repair. So if they take the chandelier down, they got to put another one back up, and it needs to be done in a workmanlike manner. This is where we address personal property. And again, this is not anything that was on the list previously. This is typically going to be your refrigerator, your washer and dryer, the patio furniture, you know, whatever the case may be, not something that is nailed or screwed down. Don't go overboard here. Let's be reasonable, because if we like list, all of the furniture in the house, the lender might be like, I don't know about that. This is a 3,000 square foot house, and there's some value to that because this is clearly saying that there's at no value. We do have a bill of sale that can be done separately outside of listing everything here. And even though it's a bill of sale, it can be $1. And that's taken care of on a separate document, whatever the buyer and seller agreed. So just be careful, especially when you get into big ticket items like zero turn lawnmower, the John Deere tractor.
What about drapery?
Let's see.
Would that be bill of sale? The curtain rods do, but do the curtains stay automatically?
No,
I thought it said it did.
just the curtain rods.
It's just the rods.
Window, door, blind, shades, curtain, drapery, rods. Okay, brackets, door windows. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Would
the
that
actual material.
Would that need to be on a bill of sale, or could that be here on personal property?
I think it could be on personal property. Yeah, even though I know sometimes drapery can be very,
Thousands of dollars.
I know.
yeah, very expensive. I think just from the lender perspective, then, you know, they were like, oh yeah, well, it's just curtains. You know, like they don't necessarily know what that value is. Yeah. The red, it's just warning the buyer. Conduct your due diligence. We're warning you. We told you. Remember, it was circled in red on that offer to purchase. We told you to do those inspections. We advise you to do all of those. So just again, there's no loan or appraisal contingency in this offer to purchase. So even though so when we get to the loan section, that's for informational purposes only. It's just disclosure to say, this is the type of loan that I'm getting. this is the loan to value, or this is how much my loan is gonna be for. All of that is for informational purposes only and can make your offer stronger. So if I'm a seller and I'm sitting with, two offers in hand, and I've got one offer that is a 95% loan to value loan. And I got another offer over here, they're putting 50% down. So they've only got a 50% loan. I mean, I'm not judging, but I'm a seller, so I can. You know, I might take this 50% down because it's a stronger, higher likelihood of it going to closing than running into a potential appraisal or, what's up, Kurt? What's the highest likelihood of it going to closing? Is there a possibility that more could go wrong on a 95% loan to value? What if it doesn't appraise? These folks over here, 50% down, they got some cash, feeling a little better about them, but it's not contingent at all. And I won't confuse you. So just a reminder of that. We do not have a contingent offer in the state of North Carolina any longer. We used to have a contingent offer. That was back before all of y'all were born. Well, maybe not Kim. This section, sorry. All right, go the other way, Karen. Which way do I want to go? Okay, so then we've told you, buyer, do your due diligence. These are all of the things that would be covered under due diligence. Review all the documents, provide them with the restrictive covenants, anything like that. Whether they read it or not your problem, but I gave it to you. And so you were made aware. The attorney's also gonna, they're not gonna go through it, because I mean, really, if you think about like Mill Point, I think the last time that I checked, which was, I don't know, several years ago, but when we were building in Mill Point, it was, the restricted covenants were 204 pages long at that time. So amendments and, you know, all of that, I'm not reading through 204 pages. Here it is. They make their own interpretation of it so that you're not telling them, hey, can I have chickens in my backyard? I'm not sure. You know, I sent you the HOA. I sent you the restricted covenants. Why don't you check that and see if they're in there? Because sure as the day that I say, sure, you can have chickens in your backyard. And it's like, no, you can't have chickens in the backyard. Well, the neighbor has chickens in their backyard. Okay, but your other neighbor decided they don't like you. So they're turning you into the HOA. And now I've told them they can have chickens in their backyard. Now they're mad at me.
Karen,
Yes.
for, all those covenants and everything for an HOA, don't you upload all of that stuff into the docs and a listing, right? Like an MLS into the, like the docs part?
I highly recommend it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And also in command as well. So all of these things, inspections, review documents, insurance, make sure they can get insurance on the property, appraisal, survey, zoning regulations, floodplain. We do let them know about that because we pulled that. Utility access, streets, roads, all of these things, special assessments. Here's the next part, unless otherwise, as noted in paragraph 5B, unless otherwise provided in an addendum, this contract is not conditioned upon the sale or lease or closing of another property owned by the buyer. So same thing, we're checking the boxes that says they must, but it's not contingent upon. It's for informational purposes for the seller to decides if they want to accept or how they want to negotiate the offer. Unless the parties agree otherwise, the property is being sold in its current condition. We don't have to add property being sold as is. It already says it. Buyer must repair any damage that should occur, may occur during their inspections. So that means if the home inspector is in the attic and falls through the ceiling, the buyer is responsible for making that repair. This does not include if the home inspector is in the crawl space and they take their screwdriver and they jab it into one of the floor joists. That is not damage. That damage was already there. All they did was put their screwdriver in it to see,
How deep it-
yes, to see how rotten the wood already was. And then there's an indemnity clause where the buyer holds the seller harmless. So if the buyer falls down the stairs from no fault of the seller, you know, meaning like it wasn't a hazard or anything like that, then they can't sue. Well, they can, because anybody can sue anybody for anything. There's an indemnity clause in there that says, you fell down the stairs, I didn't push you, I didn't create a hazard that caused you to fall down the stairs, and, so you can't sue me.
What if you're just showing a house and say like a door handle like falls off or whatever,
Yeah,
and then you just happen to like text. And say, hey, your door handle fell off, and she's like, cool, all good. Like theoretically, if you're just showing it, like would I be responsible?
No.
Okay.
however, if you, open the lockbox and you take the key with you, and then you lose the key, as an agent, yes, you are responsible for getting that property rekeyed for access. But not the handle falling off, because there was already an issue going on there anyway. I mean, I feel certain you didn't like, let me see if I can get this handle.
It totally fell off. And so I mean, this is months ago, and I told her I just wasn't sure, because that's not the same as being like under contract. That's just like
Right.
showing, so.
Yes,
I had
Yeah.
a key break off at deadbolt
Oh,
once.
God.
Oh, no.
Couldn't lock the front door of the house because that was the key to the
Oh,
garage,
my
was the key to the
gosh.
front door of the
Oh,
house.
no.
That's always like so scary.
And it was like, you know, in Indianapolis, snowing outside, it's great.
6 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can't get over the age.
yeah.
So it's
Leave the house.
perfect, yeah. Just no electronic door lock. Good
Yeah.
luck.
Yeah.
Yes. Buyer's right to terminate. So, provided that the buyer has paid the due diligence fee, we shouldn't even be this far, and they should not be doing inspections if you have not received the due diligence fee. Yet, assuming that they have, paid the due diligence fee, the buyer has the right to terminate the contract for any reason or no reason, by delivering to seller the termination notice during the due diligence period. Time is of the essence. That's at 5 p.m. If the buyer timely delivers a termination notice, contract is terminated, and the earnest money deposit, if any, is refunded to the buyer. Closing shall constitute acceptance of the property in its then existing condition unless provision is otherwise made in writing. So interestingly enough, one thing that I see that some attorneys are doing is that they are requiring the buyer to sign a piece of paper at closing that says, you've seen this property recently and you accept it in the as-is, in the condition that it's in as of the time of you sitting down signing these documents. So to CYA for them also kind of helps us, CYA as well. Okay, buyer representation. So see, notice this says buyer representations. It does not say contingencies. First box is cash. We always like seeing those boxes checked, although it's not the norm. And then the rest of it is buyer intends to obtain a loan Again, informational purposes only, yet you should know this information because you have a pre-approval letter from the lender that you're submitting with your offer. So is it a first mortgage? And then is it FHA, VA? Is it conventional USDA or other type? And then the principal amount of, sometimes this is a number, sometimes this might be an LTV, not like 95% LTV, 80% LTV, that sort of thing.
Can I ask you a question right there? Is that where you literally need to pick up the phone and ask the lender this information before submitting the offer? Because otherwise, I mean.
Typically, it's on your prequal. It should be,
gotcha.
should be on the prequal. Yeah,
Not always, but
not
Yeah,
always,
That's what I'm saying, I never see.
yeah,
Okay.
not always, but yes, should be. Is it a second mortgage loan and, other funds? So other funds would be mom and dad are going to gift me $25,000 for the purchase of this house
do I have to disclose that if I don't want to?
to the lender.
Right, but I don't have to put it in the
I don't have
contract
to
if I
hit-
don't want to.
Even though like, say, yeah, I'm buying the house, it's $300,000. I'm telling you that I'm getting a loan for $200,000. Are you not wondering where that other $100,000 is?
Well, I mean, there are agents, there have been cases when I have asked for proof of funds of the gap.
Yeah.
Just because I didn't feel real comfortable about it. There have been other times when I'm like, I know who this person is and I know they have plenty of money.
Okay,
So I'm not asking because I didn't want to offend.
right.
But yeah, if there's a concern, I mean, I've even asked before when it was a 95% loan to value.
Where's
Like,
the other 5%?
where's the, yeah, you got the other 5%, yeah,
Okay.
that sort of thing. So,
Okay.
but no, you do not have to. It's informational purposes only. Same thing here, buyer does or does not have to sell or lease another property. If they do, what's the property address? And then is it listed or intended to be listed? Is listed, will be listed, buyers attempting for sale by owner. So, you can, you, as the listing agent, you are fully entitled to request a copy of if their house is currently under contract, to request a copy of that current contract. There are certain things on there that can be redacted. Some things I'm looking for is, when does that due diligence period end? When is that closing date? What kind of loan is that person getting? Those sorts of things. I mean, technically they can redact any, not their name, but they can redact the buyer's name, on theirs. So, recommend if you're getting an offer that their house is under contract, great, we'd like to see a copy of that contract. Agents that don't know better will try to argue with you about that, and then you can just, direct them to page 7 of the offer to purchase. RPD, has or have not, again, you're gonna load these into MLS, so in most cases, you're gonna have them. If the agent has not loaded them into MLS, request them. I know sometimes we get in a time crunch and we need to write this offer right now, which is why you can check buyer has not received, and then the buyer has the 3 calendar days in order to review. If they don't receive them within the 3 calendar days, they can terminate the contract for not receiving the residential property disclosure and or the mineral oil gas rights. There are exemptions for both the residential property disclosure and also the mineral oil gas. There are about, I think there's 12 exemptions. Probably what you're going to run into most are foreclosures and trusts. couple others are, it was, deeded to a family member, so husband and wife are getting divorced. One quit claims the deed over to the other, then, you know, or, it is, same thing, thanks for being here, Andrew.
I have a coaching caller on.
So those sorts of things, but those are the most typical. In most cases, you need to get that residential property disclosure.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Too much further, on the, funding part,
Yes.
for the, if they, for the principal amount, do you put the loan amount less the down payment, due diligence, and earnest money?
So it would only be, not due diligence and earnest money.
Just the down payment?
That's correct. So because it is just how much are they putting down? So what's their down payment? So purchase price minus the down payment would be that amount. Yeah. And again, typically that's going to be on your, pre-approval letter from the lender. All right, I know we're right at 2, but let me zoom through this. Buyer obligations, the buyer is required to pay for any and all inspections that they perform. And so essentially, if you try to think of anything that benefits the buyer pays for. Anything that benefits the seller pays for. Okay, so the seller has to pay revenue stamps when it goes to closing because they sold their house and they got their check. And so that's a benefit to the seller. Seller representations has not, or does not yet own lead-based paint. Owners Association, please insert this information. It should be provided to you and either through the residential property disclosure or the HOA addendum. Make sure you put this information on there. It be proactive from the front. The attorney's going to ask you for it anyway. And we also now know that your buyer is aware of it and agreeing to it as well. Fuel tanks is or is not self-explanatory on this. Any tank that is owned by the seller is included in the sale. Many times propane tanks are leased, and that's where they just ask who services it. Because many times the buyer can just call that same company, kind of like Duke Energy, just call and say, hey, I'm the new owner, keep servicing, you know, that sort of thing. And, but if it is a tank that is owned by the seller, then it remains. The seller cannot take that tank with them. And also any fuel that is in the tank remains at no additional cost. Leases, property is or is not subject to a lease. These are seller's responsibilities, that they will deliver clear title. They'll provide access to property, reasonable access to the property. No, we can't go every single day and measure for curtains and take my new comforter I just bought and go over there and make sure that it looks good with the carpet. No, reasonable. So this is for inspections. Oh, my mom and dad are in town. Can we go look at the house? Just reasonable. And also on this reasonable access to the property. This is kind of a side note, but it's before you go under contract. Be careful when an agent says, I'm going to schedule a showing and the buyer and their contractor are going to come for the showing. No. We allow due diligence before there's any money. That's due diligence, because I'm gonna tell you right now, that contractor is crawling all over that house, looking at every single thing. You don't get to do inspections until my seller has some money in their pocket. So just be aware, because there are some agents that will try to pull some trickery like that. If it is, I mean, if the seller's fine with it, then okay, the seller's fine with it. Just advise on the reasons that you would or would not want to do that. If it needs, you know, if the seller understands and knows, okay, there's a lot of repairs that, or, you know, things that need to be done, they might be okay with somebody coming in to at least get a general idea of what is it gonna cost, but, just, be aware of that. Okay, here, deed taxes and fees. Seller pays for preparation of deed, all over documents necessary to perform the seller's obligation. We talked about that. Insert name. You don't have to put anything. You can leave that blank. If the buyer's name is no different than the buyer on page 1, then you don't have to put anything in here. If the buyer's name on page 1 wants it to go into their entity, that's where you would put something there. So Karen Ward might be the buyer for, you know, different reasons, maybe because I'm getting a loan in my personal name, not a loan in my business name, yet I want it deeded to Casco Properties. So that's where you would put something in.
But doesn't that, I ran into that not too long ago, and doesn't like then the lending for like an S corp or an LLC or anything like that is totally different.
Yes.
So then, do you have to put any additional information other than like, I mean, if there's a discrepancy there, like, cause that is too, like, okay, so if this were not a cash and it required lending, then the lending would then have to be under the entity, right? Not under the individual.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yes. In some cases, yes. So the flip side of that can sometimes, I'm buying it in an entity, but I'm deeding it to myself.
Okay.
You can always overcome that
It's
if you
probably
run
just
into.
a very specific question.
Yeah,
at a time. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And then, so leave it blank if it's no different than the buyer on page 1. Or you can, you know, because the other thing too is that I could be buying this property and I want it to put it in my trust. I want my trust to hold it. And so that's how the deeds would be made. Buyer expenses, self-explanatory.
Yeah, when you read that one, though, where it says obviously seller shall pay a settlement towards any buyer expense associated. But then it says if any, including any FHA/VA lender and inspection costs. So is that always FHA/VA
Yes.
seller pays inspection?
No, they do not pay inspection, and a lot of that has changed. It used to be that for FHA and VA, the seller was required to pay for the pest inspection. The seller was required to pay for a water inspection. That is not the case anymore. So ours is antiquated for this document, even though it just came out in January. Well, no, this was July of last year. So we'll be getting a new one. So, you know, a month from now, 2 months from now, y'all can forget everything that you learned.
So how do you know if they're required to pay? Does the lender say, hey, they're required to pay
Yes.
this
Yes,
based on the
FH
person's money?
it's FHA or VA. Yes, yeah, only FHA or VA. And like I said, I think they've changed their policies on that now anyway, because we don't see it show up on.
The selection.
Yeah.
So does that mean, but like with the way that's written says FHA/VA lender, meaning you pay for their lender?
Mm-mm. Lender required, where am I?
Agreement to pay buyer expense, there at the very end of that sentence.
Letter J.
Including any FHA, VA, lender and inspection costs that buyer is not permitted to pay. So the lender is required, like the lender required the pest inspection to be paid by the seller, not lender expenses. Not like the, or, yeah, not like their loan origination fee or anything like that.
Just read it.
Yeah, I know.
And for the lenders.
I'm not saying I disagree with you, Kim. I don't
People read.
I don't write the documents. I just provide my feedback to the forms committee and, yeah. Owners Association, seller shall pay any charges by an owner association or management company, for transfer. So most of the time there is a transfer fee, and seller pays the transfer fee, special assessments. So essentially on special assessments, if it's already there, if the special assessment has already been placed, the seller pays for it. If there's a pending special assessment that's not gonna be assessed until after closing, the buyer pays it. Again, seller pays when it benefits the seller, buyer pays when it benefits the buyer. Negotiated repairs, they must be done in a good workmanlike manner. Next week, we're going to, we have miscellaneous forms next week, so we're gonna talk about GDRA and good ways to fill those out. Home warranty, if there is one, if you're asking for one and it's agreed upon, go ahead and fill out the application and send it in. If it's on the buyer side. If you're asking the seller to do it, then it behooves the seller to go ahead and do it. Because they're gonna pay for it anyway. If they do it while they're still in the house, then they get the coverage. We talked about owners association, working capital contributions, membership fees, things like that, for the once the buyer, takes possession. Prorations and adjustments, these are things that are on your settlement statement. These are, dues, taxes, all of those things that are prorated, rents, if any. Condition of the property at settlement. So this was your, Amber, this was your question. If the property is not in substantially the same or better condition at closing as on the date of this offer, reasonable wear and tear accepted, buyer may terminate this contract by written notice delivered to the seller, and the due diligence fee and earnest money deposit shall be refunded to the buyer. If the property is not in such condition and the buyer does not elect to terminate the contract, buyer shall be entitled to receive, in addition to the property, the proceeds of any insurance claim filed by the seller on account of any damages or destruction of the property. Okay, so like I said, we had a tree fall through a section of the house 2 days before closing. So naturally, they filed an insurance claim with it. So if the buyer can say, I ain't got no house, no tree. Or they can say, yeah, no, we're good with it. But the seller has to give them those insurance proceeds in order to pay for it, because the buyer's insurance wouldn't cover it because they didn't own it at the time. Delay in settlement. So basically, there's 7 days. We have a delaying party and we have a non-delaying party. Either party gets 7 days. Can't do anything for those 7 days. So a lot of times, you might have a seller that's like, well, this buyer has ghosted us, and if we don't close on whatever, I'm terminating the contract. No, you're not. You gotta wait those 7 days. And after that 7 days, then you can terminate. The non-delaying party can terminate the contract.
What 7 days after the actual
Closing,
closing day?
yes,
That
so-
was scheduled?
that is correct, yes,
Okay,
or any extension.
okay,
So if you've signed an agreement to amend that extends the closing date,
and then 7 after
7
that.
after that, yes.
So does that, I get what you're saying there, but like, does that, I guess I'm trying to think of the scenarios for people like, well, we've got 7 days after closing. That's really not what that's about,
That's
right?
not what it's about yet. Sometimes agents will use it in that way and sometimes not intentionally. So I had a property that closed on Monday. It was supposed to close last Thursday. And it didn't because the lender didn't get the closing disclosure out within the 3 days. So
So you extended it?
So, okay, so I asked the agent, I said, do you want me to send you an extension? Are you good with us just invoking the 7 days? Because we knew it was gonna close on Monday. And she said, we don't need an extension. So, no, I didn't, I used it because that cushion was there, but not intentionally. I mean, I didn't go into it saying,
So did you, like, in that case right there, like, because the lender, again, it's supposed to be 3 days before closing, right?
Right.
If we don't get those, then we have, I guess, the authorization to go within that 7 days, because
Yeah.
that way we have time to review it like we're supposed to, and not 12 hours before we're supposed to go to the table.
Yeah.
Right?
yes.
Okay. Okay, so we could say, but then does the attorney have to be obviously on board? Like,
Yeah, so you gotta reschedule it with the attorney. You gotta make sure that it's okay with the lender
Okay,
because
That
now that they have to
for-
redo the package and that sort of thing. In this case, this was the lender's fault.
Yeah.
They were following the rules. 'Cause sometimes it's like you get it 12 hours before or 12 minutes before and they still expect you to close. This particular lender was like, we can't get it to you 3 days in advance, so we need to push it out till Monday. So we did get it on Thursday.
okay.
And so, which was the reason, and so it was just one more piece of paper that we didn't need because it was built into the contract, yeah. Yes,
I was just
Yeah.
curious, because it seems like the couple that I've had that lenders are pushing you like, and I'm not seeing that 3 day thing, and
Yeah.
I thought we said that was the deal.
it's supposed to be.
Supposed to be, but yeah, they're always like working on it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be reading this thing? Cause.
Yeah, yeah, like, didn't you have that in your calendar that it needed to go out on this day in order for closing to happen on this day?
Working on it, you know.
Yes, yes. So 7 days, at the end of 7 days, the non-delaying party can unilaterally terminate the contract. Possession, buyer possession before, seller possession after, not highly recommended. If you have to, just make sure you use the form. It is a, protection for all parties. Any addenda? Any addenda, check boxes. The only thing you can write here is anything that was drafted by the buyer, the seller, or an attorney. Not by you. And you don't write in here, being sold as is. We already know. It already said it earlier. But this might be a, for foreclosure, for example, you're gonna put real estate purchase addendum in here because it's an attorney drafted addendum that is part of this offer as well. Like I said, buyer and seller can draft. So the seller can draft a document that says this property is being sold as is. And call it addendum A or whatever they want to call it. And they can ask the buyer to sign it. And if the buyer signs it and they're in agreement, again, it's redundant, but if that's what they want to do, then that becomes exhibit A. That makes sense? No other verbiage or anything like that. Assignments, we're seeing more and more assignments. You can't assign the contract unless all parties agree. Typically, you're gonna have one party that doesn't agree, which is why we don't spend a whole lot of time. Tax deferred exchange, make sure you get with an attorney or a 1031 expert on a tax deferred exchange. Computation of days. Consecutive calendar days. The count of days begins on the day following the day upon which,
Highlight that for Andrew.
yeah, yes. And then it talks about remedies, breach by the buyer, breach by the seller. Come on, fingers, work. Again, just, seller, so we have seller signature, if it's an entity. Ward Real Estate Group would go here. I would sign. Print my name, my title and date. So Ward Real Estate Group by Karen Ward, because I'm the authorized signer. And then I would type my name, because sometimes you can't read what people's names say when they sign, title and then date. And y'all, I apologize, I really have run over, but. Agency notice and address, please fill out this information as a courtesy to the agent on the other side. All of that information is on the MLS sheet. So it's not like you have to go search high and low for it. We used to, but now it's all on the MLS sheet. Also disclose in what agency capacity you are working. Are you a buyer agent? Are you a seller sub agent? Are you a dual agent? On the listing side, are you the seller's agent or are you a dual agent? Joanne, if you're a buyer agent and Nellie is the listing agent, what box would you check?
Selling, acting as buyer's agent,
And Nellie's the listing agent.
acting as seller's agent.
Yeah.
Oh.
So up here, you would be a dual, because we're under the same umbrella, right? In the same firm, you're a dual. And then when you get down here, you're also going to be a designated, because when you had them fill out that paperwork, they initialed that third line. They initialed the second line in the first part that said they allow dual. And then in the second part, the third line that says they allow dual designated. So same thing with Nellie, when she got her listing agreement signed. They have to mirror, they have to match each other. And so what that means is that even though you're with the same firm, you have a confidential fiduciary to your client. Nellie has a confidential fiduciary to her client. So you guys don't get together and exchange confidential information. Sure.
So Keller Williams Central, and I think it's Keller Williams Elite, is that a dual?
No, we're two different. So think about firm number. So they have a different firm number. So KW1 that's in Greensboro, we've got KW Elite that's in Durham, KW United in Chapel Hill. If it's anything like that, like with Chloe,
Right.
you did your paperwork correct.
Oh.
Yes. Yes. Now, I don't know what Chloe's looks like. No, I'm kidding. Yes, so you are, even though your buyer paperwork said that your buyer said, I allow dual and dual designated, you weren't in that situation.
Right, okay.
Yes, so you were just a buyer's agent in that case, because you're not with the same firm. And again, make sure, license numbers are on here. That's very important. Should you ever have a complaint filed against you with the real estate commission, and this piece of paper goes to the real estate commission, because it will, because they will ask for it, and your license number is not on there, they're not gonna be real happy about that. The reason the license number is required on here is so that the buyer so that the client can find you. with the real estate commission.
C 21388, right?
213, yeah.
21388.
Yeah.
It's only taken 6 months.
Well, it's okay, you know. And then, of course, you've got your acknowledgement of due diligence and or earnest money. Many times the due diligence fee goes directly to the seller, so the agent doesn't have to sign. If you physically didn't touch it, you don't have to sign this form. The seller has to sign it. And if you're a provisional broker, you cannot physically touch due diligence money and or earnest money. And then, of course, the earnest money is where we just have the attorney send us that they confirmed receipt or a confirmed wire, something that we can say, yep, it was sent, yep, you got it. We don't have it. Don't come after us for no money. Questions?
The designated dual, that's only if they're with KW Central, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Of closing instructions,
Mhm.
but,
Then it changes.
yeah.
Yes, okay. There's a form for that.
There's always a form for
Yes,
that.
yes. That's always my favorite thing to say. There's a form for that. I had to call the real estate commission about something that was wonky the other day. And I got, Shauna and I was like, okay, Shauna, I got one for you. I said, there's not a form for it. And he's like, what? I'm like, there's not a form for it. So it was kind of funny, but it's typically, it's like, oh, there's a form for that. On the, agreement to amend, it has on there that the escrow agent has changed. You can check if the escrow agent has changed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do they need to sign it? Or?
It has to be signed by both parties.
Okay.
So buyer and seller, that document is between buyer and seller. And, it really is just for notification. But again, they added it. It wasn't there before. They added it because people were saying, okay, well, the closing attorney changed and I don't have any way to notify. And so that's what they added it to that form. Josh, any questions? Thanks for virtually being here.
I have no
Hopefully I
questions.
didn't
Thank
put
you.
you to sleep. Oh, no, there you are.
Yeah, I can't ever find the mute button right away.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
It always takes me a minute to find the mute button.
You're all good?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you very much
Okay,
for all
thanks
this.
for being here.
Thank
All right. Well, thank y'all for being here. Thanks for being learning
No,
based.
thank you, Karen.
Well, like I said, I want to quit sharing there.
I didn't know if you caught that, I was like, well, I guess you gotta look, I'm not, I did, okay.